record on. And I would like you to please rename yourself if you've not done so already, your name, your organization, and your location. You can do this by clicking on your picture and renaming yourself. Please ensure you remain muted unless you go to questions or the breakout rooms. And if you need any support or have questions for the presenter, type them in the chat, and Amanda will make sure that Katie is aware of those. And once our presenter begins, please keep your video turned off for the quality of the session. When we go into breakout rooms, of course, turn your videos on. And also at any time that the presenter might ask you to. On that note, I'm pleased to introduce our presenter, Katherine Trudeau, for this session and turn things over to her. Enjoy.
Thank you, Rose. Hello, everyone. I'm gonna quickly try and figure out the share screen and get that presentation rolling. Great. Hopefully you can see it. Well, welcome. Thank you so much first for coming to the conference and caring about environmental education in Colorado, but also specifically thank you for coming to this particular session. I feel very strongly about enhancing the middle school experience, so I really appreciate that other people also care about enhancing the middle school experience. For this presentation, if you have any theoretical questions, feel free to save them to the end. There will be a questions and answer session. But if you have any clarifying questions, free to middle school. So we do have a Google that works.
Do you have the link so I could post it into the group chat, or do you feel comfortable posting that Zoom poll in there?
I think I sent the poll to Rose or Nicole.
Okay. Rose, are you seeing that?
Let me see. Oh.
I'm sorry, Katie. You had frozen on my end. Are you ready for the poll now?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
And then Rose, does the poll results come to your screen or does it come to the chat box?
No, I'm going to try and share screen so that hopefully you can see it. And I just assumed we would, I mean, people are polling. And I just assumed everybody would be able to see it. So I've got to figure this out. It says attendees are now viewing questions. I've got 16 out of 17 have voted. That's probably everybody except for me. But now how do I get this to you? Okay, so can I just give you the answers?
Sure,
To
that'd be awesome.
expedite things, the answer to the first question is 13%. The second question is 75%. We got 0 that are only middle school, and then 31% that are support, admin, or curriculum design.
Okay, awesome.
Does that give you what you need?
Yeah, so it sounds like the 75% of us, or the majority of us, have the occasional, oh, there it is.
Yep.
Have the occasional middle school group, and we mostly work with elementary students. And that was my experience for both of the environmental education centers that I also had been working at. Was I had mostly been doing elementary school, and then every once in a while I would end up with a middle school group, and it was kind of scary. I didn't really know what to do. They were, sixth graders are really different from kindergartners. So my next question is, what word comes to mind when you're asked to teach middle school students? And for this question, I'm going to post a link in the chat box, and you can fill in. It's anonymous. You can put as many words as you want. You can put as many answers as you want. And then I will share the word cloud that comes out of that. So in the chat box, here's the link. So just follow the link and add your answer.
Repeat the question again, Katie, please.
What comes to mind when you're told that you're going to be teaching a group of middle school students? So when it pops up on your schedule that, you're on Friday, you're going to have a group of 8th graders, how are you feeling about that? So it looks like we have the whole spectrum here. We've got excited, we've got engaged and happy, and then we've got people who are feeling just the opposite, that the kids may be unengaged, or it's scary, it's hard, immature.
So Katie, we're not seeing the screen, so make sure you've got it chosen.
Can you see it now?
No, I think you need to go to your, you need to choose what you want to be sharing, because we're not seeing your cloud.
All right, let's try.
Katie, this
How
is
about-
Amanda. Yeah, we can see it on my end. It looks like in the chat box, the majority of folks can see it.
My
Awesome.
goodness. Okay.
Yeah, we
So-
got, you're good to go.
Awesome.
It's just
So-
not recording on recording though.
Well, I can verbally tell you what some of the words are. We've got silly and weird and exciting. Then you've got like an opportunity, engaged, curious. These kids, we tend to feel like they are more, you're able to go more in depth with middle school students because they have the background science. But at the same time, we've got people who wrote scary, immature, unengaged. And so I feel like we definitely have the whole spectrum of experiences with middle schoolers. And I'm one of the people who at first was worried. I was like, this is going to be exciting, but they're also kind of scary. What if they don't like me? The kindergartners, they always hold on to you and they want hugs and they want your attention. And the middle schoolers, they're not really like that. So my experience was similar to yours, a combination of very excited, but also a little worried. And one day I was hiking up a mountain with a bunch of middle schoolers, and one of the middle schoolers, I heard her say to her friend, walking mountains is boring. Everyone just tells us what to do. Sometimes you want to explore and be kids, And I realized that our middle schoolers, who used to be the ones that would drag their feet to get back on the bus, were now dragging their feet to get off the bus. Many of them just didn't want to be there. And so I started to wonder, is that something that is just a Walking Mountains problem, or do many organizations find that middle schoolers have a lack of interest? And Rose, can you confirm that the slideshow is playing?
My computer is not bringing it through, so I'm hoping that the participants are able to see it.
Amanda, are you able to see it?
Yeah, Katie, on my end, your PowerPoint looks great. All the polls are populating, and we're getting feedback in the chat that they're working. So
Awesome.
carry on, you're doing great.
Great. So I started with some background research and discovered that there was a loss of interest in science across the board for many students. Many people have documented that as students move from 5th grade all the way up through 8th grade, the average interest in science is dropping. And as an environmental education educator, professional, that really worried me because, I mean, the whole reason that I love environmental education is because I love the nature and the environment and I want to share that passion. But we were finding that as students got older and they started to lose interest in science, that correlated with a lack of interest in nature and the environment. Macbeth and Volk, the study that is cited here, they had done research on 6th graders and 8th graders, and they found that 6th graders had a higher interest in the environment and more care and passion for nature. And they thought, well, maybe if we do more EE curriculum, that could help. So there was one study where they took, I think it was 4th graders and 7th graders, and they brought them to a residential science program, and they did pre-tests and post-tests, and the 4th graders had a higher increase in love of nature at the end of the program than the 7th graders. And the 4th graders also carried on that increased appreciation longer. So even after being tested 6 months later, they were able to maintain those gains, whereas the 7th graders lost those gains after about a month. This research was also done in the school setting. They took 6th and 8th grade students, and they had the control group did regular science, and the experimental group used Project Learning Tree. And they tried to see if Project Learning Tree would increase students' interest in the environment. And unfortunately, there was no significant change. So that led me to wonder, well, why is it that EE isn't increasing the affection for the environment and interest in science? Because, I mean, that's why I do this job, because I'm really passionate about it. How can we have EE, that intervention that does work? So the factors that had been brought up in much of the research was that one idea, there's three ideas, that activities was the problem, relationships could be the problem, and topics. For activities, the researchers were saying that the activities that we generally tend to associate with environmental education is too basic. So the kind of things that we might have in state-provided curriculum or Project Learning Tree or Project WET that doesn't really meet middle schoolers where they're at. They're in a formal operational stage. They want to do problem solving and experiments, and they're really interested in growth for themselves, so maybe like investigating careers. Then there were some researchers who felt that relational pedagogy is to blame for students losing interest in science as they get older. Relational pedagogy is the idea that having a close relationship with your teacher could increase your engagement, and when students move to middle school, they are having a science teacher for maybe like 40 minutes to an hour a day. And so maybe they don't have that relationship. And if relational pedagogy could improve our engagement in science, that would look like having our students matched with educators that might meet their needs. So finding maybe like matching female groups with a female educator, or matching them based on language or background. But on the flip side, other scientists were saying, well, no, it's not about the teacher. At that age where they're at, they're trying to develop their identity, and the peers are going to be way more important. So if you have more team building activities and more group work with peers and less interaction with the teachers, that's going to increase their engagement. And the third topic, which is topics, was that if a kid is interested in a topic, then that alone will engage them. And to have that, but it's really hard to find a topic that all kids would be interested in. Some kids like dinosaurs, some kids like space. So there's the idea that you could have novel topics. So the novelty aspect, that excitement, like that is something that's a universal interest. And the other, oops, we're waiting for it to, Amanda, do you need to control my screen? Oh.
No, I got it. I'm good now.
And the other, but the other researchers, Kaplan and Kaplan, in their reasonable person model, their idea was that instead of having like the novel, sexy, exciting topics, what middle schoolers want is a chance for meaningful work and learning something that might be more related to their communities or their sense of self. So for my thesis, I was trying to figure out, well, what do middle school students perceive as meaningful to their engagement? And once we know that, how can we better meet their needs? And so we created a survey with open-ended multiple choice questions. We had focus group interviews, and we interviewed the teachers. And we had quite the response rate. We had 363 students in all grades, 4 different schools responded. More than half the students identified as white, about a quarter of them identified as Latinx. And then I think what's interesting is we allowed the students to self-identify their race. So it was just a blank box that we didn't ask them to check a box. They were allowed to write it in. So that 14% other, that is not necessarily like other as in not white, Latinx, or multiracial. Those were the students who wrote American, don't know, why are you asking me this, rocket scientist, hobbit, toaster. So we don't really know what that 14% was. For the interviews, we were able to get 25 student interviews, and we did 3 teacher interviews. And after summarizing all the data, we decided that freedom and friendship is what students are looking for in outdoor education. And so what is freedom and friendship? Oops. So we asked the students a set of questions. They were Likert scale questions. So the students were to rank from 1 to 7, how important something was to their outdoor education experience. And those would be questions like, I enjoy the activities that we're doing. I can relate to my outdoor education teacher, and as in like race, gender, language. I get to work with my friends. So all of those questions, there was 25 of them, they all fell within one of these 5 categories. And then we averaged them up. And the highest one we found was choice and freedom was the most important to the students, followed by relationship to their peers. We did a Wilcoxon signed ranks test, and that showed us that there is no statistical difference between choice and freedom and relationships with their peers. So we can't really say which one was more important to them, but it did show us that choice and freedom was significantly ranked higher than activities, topics, and teachers. And relationships with their peers was significantly ranked higher than activities, content, and teachers. So while we don't know which was more important, we know that they were both more important than the others. And so for that freedom, we also asked the students to rank the types of activities they would want to do. They were given a set of 25 activities and allowed to pick 15 of them. The top 3 most popular activities for all demographics, age, ethnicity, gender, was building things, experiments, and hiking and adventure. And these things kind of are all activities that allow for personalization. It ranked higher than the activities that we had deemed to be traditional EE activities like Project Learning Tree, and it ranked higher than the activities that some of the researchers suggested, such as career experiment. They weren't really interested in experimenting for their, like learning about careers or doing community service projects. They wanted to hike, do experiments, and build things. And then in the interviews, the students said things, such as this. I would like to add, and that is giving kids more freedom, and freedom, at this point it's in capitals because during the interview, the particular student was shouting it. And, you know, we can ask ourselves, especially if teaching middle school is new or scary, it's like, oh my gosh, why would I let go of the reins? Why would I let middle schoolers choose what they do? So I asked the middle schoolers during the interviews, I was like, well, you say you want freedom, but what does freedom look like to you? And the kids, they had some really insightful suggestions that align with the idea of student-centered learning. So some of the students said, well, don't you remember how you gave us a demonstration and then you let us do it by ourselves? And another student said, well, just give us the directions for what we're gonna do, an idea of what you're looking for, and then allow us to interpret it in our own way. And multiple choices just said, multiple kids said, we would just like more choices. So friendship, we can see that relationships with their peers is ranked second highest. And again, it was significantly higher than relationships with their teachers, topic and content and activities. And for friendship, we gave the students 12 items and we asked them to rank these items. What is the most important to have it to be in your field group? There's 12 options. 6 options were related to a teacher and their relationship with their teacher, and 6 options were related to being with their peers and relationship with peers. The overall rankings differed by demographics. However, across age, ethnicity, and gender, these 3 things were the most important. Having friends in their field group, having a funny instructor, and being comfortable asking questions in front of the other kids. And after we asked the kids to rank these, we gave them a little space for a free response. And we asked them, well, what else could improve your field group? And despite already saying they want friends in their field group, 54% of the kids, so more than half of them, repeated, we want friends in our field group. And this is another one where at first when I saw this, I was like, oh God, why would I let kids be with their friends? Like maybe they would not listen, they might be chatty. Well, as I started talking to the students, I realized that it has less to do with goofing off and more to do with comfort. If you see the third bar from the right, about 20% of the kids also indicated that they're interested in a good relationship with their peers. And it kind of comes down to comfort. The kids who made comments that fell within the category good relationship with their peers, those students said things such as, I want to be with kids who also want to learn, or I want to be with kids who aren't going to hike too fast and leave me behind. They were worried about being with kids who don't do the work or are disrespectful to the teacher. Kids who will listen to me when I ask a question or when I share an answer. And so that comfort kind of, it was repeated when we talked to the teachers. So at Walking Mountains, we have a 98% attendance rate for kindergarten through 5th grade. So almost all the kids who are registered show up. We have an 83% attendance rate for middle schoolers. So only 83% of the kids show up. And I asked the teachers, why don't the kids show up for the field trip? And a lot of it came down to friends. So we had one teacher in 8th grade who told me that a girl just flat out said, I didn't go. I didn't think you'd put me with my friends. And then the 7th grade science teacher explained that at his school, the field trip groups had previously been organized by gender. So they had male groups and female groups, and students who were gender fluid were hesitant because they didn't want to be grouped in with the wrong gender or make gender an issue. And so I kind of changed my thinking from being like, oh, the kids just want to be with their friends because they want to have a good time and play, to like, it has a lot to do with comfort and that anxiety about being in a group where you might not feel like you belong, which reminded me, that they're adolescents and they're going through that weird time period where you're really worried about what people are thinking about you and you're afraid that you might not have friends. And then here's some quotes from the students in their interviews. And they admitted that the experience of being with their friends, it helps them learn, makes their experience better. Another student said that if he's with all new people, then he's scared to participate. And if he was with his friends, he'd be more comfortable to participate. And the students, they made it very clear that they're not asking to only have their friends. They just want 1 or 2 friends. One young man explained that it's kind of like the cafeteria. And he said, if I have like two of my friends and I see a group of two friends and they're just sitting by themselves, then we'll just join up and then we'll be 4 friends. But I'm not going to approach a group of kids if I'm the only one and they're already friends. So the takeaway that we found in our research, we were looking for what will make a field trip meaningful for middle schoolers. What types of activities should we include? What types of topics should we include? And our takeaway was that, we're not going to find a topic or an activity that fits all the students' interests. But if we allow flexibility, so that way the students have a little freedom in how they're learning, and they're allowed to be with their friends and learn in a comfortable social situation, that they will create their own meaning. And then that's going to last longer and be more impactful in the long run. So we had some recommendations from the students. They were very happy to tell us what we could fix. And so some of their suggestions were that you allow 1 friend per group, so everybody has someone that they're comfortable with in their group. At Walking Mountains, we're now going to try and revise our curriculum so it involves more problem solving and teamwork to allow for that social interaction. They are interested in having more time for exploring and socializing, or what we call the dispersed time for socializing. So making sure that in between learning activities, we're giving them a chunk of time that they can they can walk with their friends, talk with their friends, explore, and then come back to the learning. And then another suggestion that the students had was that we allow them to self-select into groups, and that maybe they know ahead of time that there's going to be the adventurous group that tries to climb to the overlook. There's going to be the brainy group that's doing discussions, and there's going to be the group of kids that are slower but like to look at nature. And then by self-selecting into that group, then they would be less concerned about asking dumb questions in front of kids they don't know, or not being able to keep up with others. In terms of freedom, Walking Mountains is now going to try to increase our professional development and student-centered learning and really make that a focus of training our staff. We're also going to work on having multiple activities for each learning standard. We have standards that we've promised the teachers that we're going to hit, but instead of having a curriculum that explains to the educators how you have to hit that standard, we're going to have multiple activities that include different types of skill sets, so the educator and the students can work together to figure out what activity might work best for their group. Structured free time. The students really loved exploring. When I asked them about, did they learn anything during their free time or their exploring time, they actually recalled a lot of things that they had observed. So even though we might think that they are off sitting on a rock and talking about something not science related, they're actually observing quite a lot. And then activities with room for interpretation. And so that, again, that kind of ties into our multiple activities for each learning standard. We want to make sure that instead of telling the students exactly what they're supposed to do, we give them instructions and then allow them to interpret it in their own way and complete the activity in a way that might be more meaningful for them. And so in practice, what could this look like? Well, we have at Walking Mountains journals, and the students are given a journal at the beginning of class or when they get off the bus, and they're expected to take notes in this journal. The journals serve 2 purposes. The first purpose is that the journals are to help the teachers see what the students have been learning and what they've been working on. And the second purpose is that we know that some kids do learn better by writing. And we want to be able to meet all the different students' learning needs. However, when we asked the students in the multiple choice survey that also had extended response, many of the students said that they did not enjoy writing in journals. They made it very clear that they did not enjoy writing in journals. During the interviews, the topic of journals came up more than anything else, with almost being mentioned almost 40 times during the interviews. And when we asked the students about the journals, very strongly worded, you have to write in the journals every 5 seconds, and yet you still learn absolutely nothing. Or, just to be honest, writing in the journals sucks the fun out of walking mountains. One kid said, well, we spend a lot of time writing stuff in something that we all always throw away right after. So they were pretty blunt that they did not like writing in journals. Now, and this is a critical part of walking mountains. But another part of walking mountains that we have is solo time. And some organizations, you may call it special spot or sit spot. Solo time is when the students are allowed to find a spot far away from everyone else, far away from the teachers and their peers, and they just sit in nature and they can reflect and journal whatever they want. And when we asked the students about the activities that they liked, we gave them a list of 25 activities, and 22% of the students, so almost a quarter of them, said that they want solo time, they enjoy it. And I asked some students during the interview, what is it about solo time that you enjoy? And the student said, well, you get to write your own thoughts, and you don't have to write thoughts that your teachers tell you to write down. So that kind of plays into that freedom. And we realized that the students enjoyed solo time because it was individualized and it allowed them to have room for creativity. And so we realized that we didn't have to scrap the journals entirely. The teachers like them, the teachers want them, but we could also make them so that way the students enjoyed them. So instead of having definitions that the students have to fill in, or you do an experiment and then you have to fill in where in the scientific method you did each part of your experiment, instead we redesigned our journals to include more open-ended prompts that allow students to use the journal as a tool for reflection. And so it's more blank spaces for them to just draw, write, and explain things. Maybe they can draw diagrams, and less fill in the blanks. And now it's your turn. So we are gonna break into breakout rooms and thinking about, that freedom and that friendship. So allowing students to have autonomy and allowing them to have peer interactions. Think about an activity that you have, or that you've maybe you've struggled with it, or you've noticed that the middle schoolers that you're working with aren't really into it. Think about that activity, share that activity with your breakout room group, and then figure out what it is that you could do to potentially make it more enjoyable for your middle schoolers, or how you might revise it. And let's see, Rose will be putting us into our breakout room shortly.
So Amanda, I didn't know if you wanted to go into a room or not. You're okay if you don't, because I bounced.
Yeah.
You can't hear me?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. I see a Wendy Dew's name up twice.
Yeah, I don't know what that
And-
is.
Sorry, I had to
Oh,
leave
okay,
and then
she's
rejoin because I
new.
got subbed out.
Okay, I'm going to assign you to a room, Wendy.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see. You were supposed to be in breakout room 1. I'm going to assign you there because you've come up twice on this. Okay, I'm going to send you, well, there's 4 in there already. I'm going to send you to 2. Should be getting your invite now.
And this breakout Rose is 10 minutes, is that correct? And then we're coming back?
She wants them back by 11:45, 11:35. She wants 10 minutes after, so I didn't notice
Okay.
exactly what time it was when we sent them in. It's 11:25 now, so 11:35 works perfect.
Perfect. And we are recording. Thanks for troubleshooting that. That was really strange.
Oh man, I had a little thing on my computer where it said, uh, something about Zoom not responding just
Yeah.
for like 10 seconds. And then it came back on again. And then it was like, oh, there's only 2 in breakout room 3. I need to move somebody.
Okay. I'm gonna grab a
That's where you were supposed to be. So let me just move somebody.
cool.
Move to, she's going to say, why did that happen?
Okay, it's about being flexible, right?
So we got a 4, 4, and a 3, and a 3. So that's good.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I am going to grab a glass of water. I will be right back. This is a great session. I'm really enjoying it.
I've had to troubleshoot too much.
Boy,
But
you're doing a great job.
I'm going to have to, and I will both send in our videos.
Okay.
And I don't know, the link is in those instructions that she sent out. If you look all the way to the bottom of the session monitor link, there's a spot there that links to the Google folder.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah, I remember that email all the way in the bottom of the session host, correct? There's
right.
Okay.
There'll be a link there that has that Google folder.
Okay.
And I will set up a folder that says this time, the Friday, 10:45, Catherine on it. And then just drop it in there and we'll both put our video in there and we'll see which one works out best when they, well, we'll both be able to look at them. I just don't, but it's weird. Maybe it's recording it and I'm just not seeing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm learning just as much as you are, so
Yep. So
we're doing a great job.
head and do what you need to do before we bring them back.
Okay. Thanks so much, Rose. I appreciate it.
All right.
Shoot.
Hey, Katie, we did have a question that did come up. It could wait till the end, but I don't know if you want me to hold that or what your thoughts are, or if you want to type in that.
You can share it. Yeah, we'll do.
Also, I accidentally left my breakout group, and it looks like they just left when I was in the middle of talking. I misread something. Whoops.
I did the same thing. I clicked OK, and then it just booted me out of the breakout room.
Yeah.
I got time shifted, Kate, from one breakout group to then all of a sudden I was in another breakout group.
The reason why that happened is we had one breakout with just 2 in it, so I shifted you over. Sorry.
And Billy and Laura, I apologize for disappearing in the middle of what I was saying. I wasn't fully reading what the prompt said, and I just clicked yes, thinking that I would go back to what we were talking about, and it didn't work.
I've done that too.
Yeah, you're good. No worries.
Yeah, Katie, so when everyone kind of rejoins, then just let me know and I'll go ahead and read that question to you.
I don't know how will we know when I think everyone's rejoined.
Everyone's back.
Everyone's back? Okay. Cool. So we had a question in the chat. It states, it's around the friendship theme that you're talking about, Katie. So regarding the friendship theme, there's a personal theory around having a facilitator who's willing to be weird and make a fool of themselves to kind of help the audience put themselves at ease. During your research, was this concept explored at all? And if so, did you have any results around that?
No, that concept wasn't actually explored. I mean, on a personal note, I feel like my experience with kids, specifically middle schoolers, is that they enjoy it. However, I have had students, when I was talking to them, like one student, I remember in particular, because one student was talking about a prior educator that had been at Walking Mountains, and she was like, the girl called herself Cupcake. What kind of a name is Cupcake? That's not a name. And so it was almost like the opposite, where they were not actually engaged. I think that maybe the balance would be in being silly, but also not treating the students as children. Like, you have to be almost mature in your weirdness. I don't know, but to answer your original question, it wasn't really addressed in the research. But I'm gonna go back to sharing the screen. So sharing out, we have a few minutes. Is there anybody who would like to share any particular things that they discussed within their discussion group or in their practice teaching middle schoolers? Any tips that you might have, or anything that you'd like to share with the group about how to engage middle schoolers more fully? And you can just unmute yourself and say it. You don't have to worry about the chat box. Going once, going twice.
So this is Wendy with EPA. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Me? Mm-hmm. So in our group, I think we just talked about how important when working with middle school, how important teacher prep is, and really having the teachers really, prepare the students for what to expect, and so that the students, when they are, joining the program, they know what's going to happen. They're prepped. They have a background. They're just really well prepped. And we were talking about how, for those of us who work in all age groups, how middle school is the most challenging age. Not entirely sure why, and wondering, if that's one of the reasons there's not as much EE programming in that, in that age group, and just really talking about making sure that you have good conversations with the teachers that they know they get the students ready for what's about to happen.
Totally. And to add on that, Wendy, I had a few students who actually, during the interview, when I asked them how we could improve our programming, they explicitly asked for an itinerary of everything that was going to happen. And they were like, if I knew that we were going to have time to build forts, I wouldn't have stayed home to play Fortnite. I like building forts. So yeah, they really wanted that itinerary as well. So you're right, being prepared and preparing the students is really important.
Thank you. Now again. I also had some experience to share a little bit that was touched on, especially in the last couple of minutes, but I've worked with middle schoolers a lot actually throughout the course of my career so far, and treating them like adults, even if it feels like not what intuitively you want to do with this age group who can push boundaries and take advantage of some freedom sometimes, but talking them to like they're adults, giving them more challenging concepts, giving them more freedom with what a project looks like, but they have more autonomy with what they're doing, I think almost always provides a better experience. And once you show them that you're trying to give them more responsibility or give them more trust, oftentimes they respond with not abusing that for the most part. Because it's something that they don't often get, it kind of seems like it usually strikes a chord with them, like, oh, I'm taking more initiative because I'm being given more and it feels nice, and that sort of thing. And talking to them, like not using your little kid voice kind of thing, but using your more like how you would talk to another adult kind of voice with them. And I think I've seen a lot of nice response emotionally from that.
And bouncing off of that, treating them as adults, I've actually found this works well with the elementary kids too, that you do have to tailor how you communicate it, but never going back to the because I said so, actually explaining the reasoning and the consequences. There's a lot more buy-in with them choosing what you like, the path that you want them to go down, whether that's behavioral or finding the answers that you would like them to find, or anything along those lines.
Great. Thanks for sharing. I know we've got very few minutes, 3 minutes left. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out, but more importantly, thank you for taking an interest in an age group that in some ways gets overlooked by EE. And I loved all of your suggestions and your input and the tips that you shared. So I really appreciate you participating in this conversation because I feel like it's really important. But I'll close with, does anyone have any questions?
One question with the self-identifying of ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
I just found it interesting that there weren't any that self-identified as African American or Black. I was just wondering if that was due to the sampling that you had and the communities that you were working in,
Yeah.
or...
I believe that was a result of our particular school district demographics. Our school district demographics are almost, not in my survey data, but in the demographics provided by the school district, it's like a 49% white Caucasian, 49% Latinx. It's almost like a half and half. So I believe, because I also was wondering the same thing when I didn't have any African American or Black kids that identified as that, and I didn't have any students that identified as Asian American. And I think it might be a result of just our school district demographics. We gave the survey online because we were supposed to do it in the schools, but then there was COVID. So while we had 1,500 students in the school district, only 363 responded to the survey link. So I think it might have been a result of the sampling.
Can you answer who's going to win the election?
No, middle schoolers can't vote yet. They're not 18.
Sorry. Happy Friday, everybody.
And with that, thank you, everybody, for coming to this session. And thank you, Catherine, for sharing this conference session with us today. We hope that all of you that are here got some neat ideas about how to work with middle schoolers, and that as a result of this session, that your work with your middle schoolers will be more connected. The shared files from today's session may be found in the schedule linked to this session within today, or at least by the very latest by Monday. Thank all of you for joining us. Now, get up, stretch, step away from the screen, and enjoy a quick self-care activity before your next session. And do note that there is a lunchtime networking chat that you can find in the schedule. That will start like immediately and go until about a little after about 12:10. The next session will start at 12:15. So for your self-care activity, what we would like you to do is drop to the floor and check out the world from the perspective of your favorite bug. Thanks for being here today and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.